The coffee shop hummed with the usual lunchtime chatter, but I barely registered it. My phone lay open on the table, its screen displaying a nightmare in high-definition color. A wedding. His wedding. Michael. Standing tall and handsome in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit, a wide, joyous smile on his face, his arm around a beautiful woman in a flowing white gown. Confetti rained down on them, sunlight streamed through an archway of flowers, and a crowd of smiling faces cheered. It was everything he had promised me, everything we had planned, meticulously, for the last 3 years. Only I wasn't the bride. And the woman he was kissing passionately, openly, was not me. Her name was Jessica, and she was his wife. The coffee in my cup turned to ash in my mouth. Our story began innocently enough, or so I thought. I was a freelance graphic designer, and Michael was a client, a charming, ambitious marketing executive. He was intelligent, witty, and incredibly attentive. After a few months of working together, he confided in me about his complicated marriage. He and Jessica, he explained, had been emotionally separated for years, living separate lives under the same roof for the sake of their 2 young children. The divorce, he insisted, was inevitable, just a messy legal entanglement holding them back. He painted a picture of a lonely man trapped in a loveless union, a man desperate for genuine connection. I, a hopeless romantic, fell for it. Hard. We started meeting discreetly, then more openly. He spoke of our future constantly. A small house with a garden, lazy Sundays, the trips we'd take, the life we'd build together once all this messy divorce stuff was over. He even showed me rings, asked about my preferences, promising he'd marry me the moment the papers were signed. I believed him. I loved him. I gave him my whole heart. For 3 years, I lived in a state of suspended animation, waiting for my real life to begin. I learned to navigate the nuances of being the other woman. The clandestine dates, the hushed phone calls, the holidays spent alone, the constant reassurance that it won't be much longer, just a few more months. Every time I questioned him, he'd have a plausible explanation, a new legal hurdle, a sudden demand from Jessica, a need to protect the children from a nasty battle. He always managed to turn my doubts into guilt, making me feel impatient, selfish for wanting our future when he was sacrificing so much to get to me. He was a master manipulator, weaving a web of hope and promises that kept me tethered to him, blind to the increasingly obvious red flags. My friends grew weary of my Michael stories. My mother, ever practical, warned me, but I dismissed them all, convinced they just didn't understand the depth of our connection, the obstacles we faced. Just last week, he had called me, his voice low and excited. "Hannah," he'd whispered. "It's happening. The papers are finally moving. I think we're weeks away. Start looking at venues, baby. Start planning our life." My heart had soared. I spent the weekend browsing Pinterest boards, imagining my wedding dress, thinking of color schemes for the reception, mentally compiling guest lists. I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years, the burden of waiting finally lifting. I even bought a new dress, a delicate pale blue, for the celebration I felt sure was just around the corner. I was so close, so incredibly close to having the future he had so vividly painted for me. And now this. The wedding photos. Not just 1 or 2, but an entire album, publicly posted on Jessica's sister's Instagram account, filled with joyful captions and heart emojis. So thrilled for my sister and Michael. What a beautiful day. The date. It was yesterday. Yesterday, while I was buying a dress for our supposed celebration, he was marrying her. The realization hit me like a physical blow, stripping away every illusion, every lie, every hope I had foolishly clung to. The difficult divorce was a fantasy. The estranged relationship was a fiction. He hadn't just been stalling. He had been living an entire, complete life with another woman, a life he had deliberately hidden from me, feeding me crumbs of false promises. The depth of his deception was breathtaking, a cold, calculated cruelty that went beyond simple infidelity. He hadn't just broken my heart, he had shattered my reality. My first instinct was rage, a raw, searing fury that made my hands shake. I wanted to storm to his office, scream at him, confront him with the evidence of his monstrous lies. I wanted to call Jessica, expose him, blow up his meticulously crafted world. But then a wave of profound shame washed over me. Shame for my naivete, for my blindness, for the years I had wasted on a man who saw me as nothing more than a convenient distraction. How many times had I defended him to my worried friends? How many times had I ignored my gut feelings? The anger turned inward, a bitter poison. I was not just a victim, I was a willing participant in my own deception, a co-conspirator in a lie that had devoured 3 years of my life. I left the coffee shop in a daze, walking aimlessly through the busy city streets, the drone of traffic a dull roar in my ears. Every happy couple I saw, every glimpse of a wedding dress in a shop window, felt like a deliberate mockery. I pulled out my phone again, my fingers hovering over his number. What would I say? What good would it do? His silence over the last 24 hours spoke volumes. He wouldn't pick up. He would probably block me. He had moved on to his perfect, legitimate life, leaving me in the wreckage of his lies. The pain was excruciating, not just the pain of a broken heart, but the pain of a shattered identity, of wasted time, of dreams that had turned to dust. I was not just heartbroken. I was deeply, fundamentally foolish. Back in my apartment, the vibrant colors of my design work, usually a source of joy, now seemed dull and meaningless. I sat on my couch, the image of his wedding photos still burned behind my eyelids. I thought of all the little lies, the inconsistencies I had dismissed, the way he always kept his phone face down, the sudden work emergencies that pulled him away on weekends, the lack of photos of him in his own home. I had rationalized them all, twisted them into evidence of his love, his struggle to be with me. Now they were just proof of my colossal self-deception. The tears finally came, hot and stinging, not just for him, but for the girl I had been 3 years ago, the optimistic, trusting woman who had believed in true love. She was gone, replaced by someone colder, more cynical, more wary of the world. Days bled into weeks. I blocked his number, unfollowed every mutual connection, scrubbed him from my digital existence. It was like erasing a ghost, a painful, necessary exorcism. The silence from him was deafening, confirming everything. He wasn't just a liar. He was a coward. There was no apology, no explanation, no attempt to justify his monstrous betrayal. He simply vanished, leaving me to pick up the pieces alone. The pain lingered, a dull throb in my chest, but gradually, a different emotion began to emerge, a quiet, steely resolve. I had lost 3 years, but I hadn't lost myself entirely. One sunny morning, months later, I walked into a new coffee shop, 1 mile away from our old haunts. I ordered a latte, not coffee. As I waited, I saw a woman at a nearby table, meticulously planning something on her laptop. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a familiar chignon. It was Jessica, the real wife. I froze. She looked tired, her eyes holding a faint sadness, but she was smiling as she pointed something on her screen to a friend. No, she wasn't sad. She was laughing. She looked happy. Their perfect wedding, their perfect life. I realized then that my anger, my hurt, my wasted years meant absolutely nothing to her. I was a footnote, a secret that had been successfully kept. And in that moment, a strange sense of liberation washed over me. He had tried to steal my future, but he couldn't steal my present. He couldn't steal my ability to create, to connect, to rebuild. I turned away, picked up my latte, and walked out of the coffee shop, leaving the ghost of Michael and his perfect, false life behind me for good. My journey wasn't about love anymore. It was about reclaiming myself.